Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wildlife 101. We're really excited. If you just signed up because you've been on our Wildlife 101 webinars tonight, I hope my background gives you an indicator as to what we're going to learn about, or maybe a little hidden gem on the screen. I went ahead and put a question in the chat to welcome everybody here. I always like to ask, where are you tuning in from? You can be as specific as saying you're cooking dinner in your kitchen, but we're really looking to see what area of Georgia, the Southeast, or the greater United States. Bonus points if you're dialing in internationally and you really care about Georgia owls. Um, so yeah, we've had kind of a wide array of folks from all over the metro area. We've had them as far as Augusta, and we had one tune in from Valdosta. So that's really exciting, but mostly people from the Piedmont region. So we're probably going to see a lot of the similar things that we talk about on here. If you're tuning in from Milton, couple fun facts for you. We um, are on the tippy top of Fulton County. Most people, uh, when I say, hey, I work for the city of Milton, they go, where is that? And I go, north of Alpharetta and south of Cherokee County. And they go, I gotcha. So if you're from the Milton area, just know we're in the Etowah and the Upper Chattahoochee River Basin. You're going to be right at the foothills of the Piedmont and or from the Appalachian Mountains, but you're still kind of in that really nice woodlands of the Piedmont. And so it offers a lot of variety because things come down from the mountains to visit us. But our year-round visitors, we've talked about on these Wildlife 101. So again, I want to welcome you. If you're just coming in the chat, I see we've got Decatur, Cumming, Canton, Johns Creek, Druid Hills, Decatur, somebody from Tucker, which is my neighborhood. I'm actually tuning in from Tucker right now. Um, and yeah, so if you have owls in your backyard, we want to hear about it. Do you know the species? And tell us where you live and the species of owl that you have somewhere around your neighborhood, even if it doesn't live in your backyard. But otherwise, we're going to kick off tonight talking a little bit about um, this awesome little creature that everybody talks about, those big, beautiful eyes. But maybe you've never seen it swoop down and actually get one of those deer mices that are running around, or have you ever seen an owl pick up a rat? That's always a good day in my neighborhood, when it picks up a rat. What we're trying to avoid is small dogs and domestic cats. So the more rats they get, the less cats they get. That's my theory.
We'll talk a little bit about that.
That's awesome. Um, so yeah, a little bit about Milton and what we have to offer. This Wildlife 101 that you've tuned in on. Our next one is actually going to be about turtles, and I've asked that our presenters tuning in from North Georgia University are going to talk a little bit more about box turtles. So I found quite a few in Milton Parks, and I'd like for them to stay there. So that's my PSA. Don't pick them up. Don't take them home. I know they're cute, but they're meant to stay. I lead a wildlife one or a wild walk Wednesday. So once a month on the third Wednesday, you can hike with Ranger Jen, and we'll talk a little bit about the changing of the environment of the park that we're in. We meet at Providence Park. So again, if you're local or you want to make a drive up to Milton, you're welcome to join us. And then I do a learn to fish program during fishing season. We just had our last fish last Saturday and we were unsuccessful. So I think we're at the end of the season. And then we run a junior ranger program that's going to offer all kinds of environmental education for our young guys. So thanks for tuning in. But today, the star of the show is Linda, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Linda. But first, let's talk about ground rules. Today we're being recorded. It will be on our website. The for you to view as long as you care to view it. You're welcome to share it with your friends. It usually takes our communications department a few days, and that recording is shareable, so it's public information. Also, on that website, you'll find any of our past ones if you just want to have something to listen to on your drive. But I would advise you to not look at the screen while you're driving. That's my other PSA for tonight. Tonight we're going to use the chat box, and that's our Q and or the chat box, not the Q&A. And so we want you to interact with us. We want you to ask Linda questions. You will not be off mic or on mic. So use that chat box to interact with Linda, ask her questions, clarifying ones, specific ones. She's really excited to hear feedback from y'all. And then at the end, there's a really short question, and it's really just to gauge, did you get out of this webinar what you're looking for? And more importantly, what do you want to learn more about? So that we can continue to offer these and meet your needs. And if you have any questions about any programs, or you live in Milton and you want to learn a little bit more about your backyard, my email address is on here for you to reach out. All right, so for the star of the show, not the owl, it's actually going to be our famous Linda May, who comes from DNR. 30 years. I couldn't believe when you
Ugh.
said 30 years with DNR, which you don't look a day over 30. So I guess you came out the womb, got an internship with Georgia DNR, and here you are today. So I hope
Keeps me
to be this
young.
graceful as I age.
Thank you. That's very
Yeah,
kind.
so I want to turn it over, but I just want you all to know that we had a Wildlife 101 back in the spring with Linda, where we learned about looking and listening for frogs and toads, and it has been so successful for me that I've gone back and watched it a couple times, because I can now, and I told Linda before we started this, identify 3 frogs in any given Milton Park just based on that presentation. So if you're curious about what's in your backyard, what you're hearing near a pond, um, you should definitely watch that one. You'll learn quite a bit. So tonight we're here to learn about owls, and I am going to allow Linda to take over.
Thank you, Jen. Let me share my screen. Hang on just a second. And there we go. And let's see. Do you guys see, are you seeing the presenter screen? Are you seeing, let's see, is that better?
There we go. You're ready.
All right, we're cooking with grease now. Well, I am super excited to be here. I'm excited that there's that many of you that are interested in owls. They're definitely one of my favorite creatures. And I've got lots to share. I don't want to get too long-winded, though. If you guys have questions, as Jen mentioned, please go ahead and put them in the chat. She's going to be monitoring that. And, I don't mind answering those along the way, because it might make better sense to do that than waiting to the end. So we're going to talk about owls, but before I get too deep into that, for those of you who aren't familiar with your state natural resources agency, Georgia DNR, I just wanted to give you a quick overview. That's who I work with. So there's as far as the structure goes, there's the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, and then underneath that are 5 different divisions. And you've probably heard of these, or maybe even, interacted with some of these divisions at some point. So Environmental Protection Division, EPD, you hear about that in the news if there's a sewage spill or a smog alert or something like that. Law enforcement, those are the game wardens. And then Coastal Resources is lesser known. They are in charge of marine fisheries and coastal ecology. So their headquarters is down in Brunswick. And State Parks and Historic Sites is probably the most well-known division of DNR. And we've got a bunch of different parks around the state that are just waiting for you to visit. Lots of pretty fall colors out there. And then I work for the Wildlife Resources Division. And as Jen mentioned, it's almost 31 years now. December, it'll be 31 years. It's crazy to believe that that's the case. Within wildlife resources, we have sections. So there's game management, there's fisheries, and wildlife resources division used to be called Game and Fish Commission, and that was it. They were pretty much just interested in things that you hunt and fish. But in more recent history, I'd say in the past 20 years or so, we added a wildlife conservation section, which used to just be called non-game, but wildlife conservation, I guess, is more overall, encompassing. But we are in charge of the 95% of species that you do not hunt, fish, or trap. And that would include cool birds like owls. So just want to give you a quick overview of how the state agency is organized. And that way, if you ever have questions, you know who to reach out to.
Linda, we've got a question about that.
Oh, okay.
Is there a geologic survey part of the DNR?
There's the U.S. Geologic Survey, not specifically part of DNR, although we do have people who are GIS wizards. So, for example, within the Wildlife Resources Division, we've got people who basically catalog and map all the different ecoregions, all the different habitats within those ecoregions, and species distribution. So lots of layers of data that help us manage wildlife, basically, especially if it's something that's rare or endangered or threatened. And also gives us an idea if there's opportunities to buy critical habitat, say from a private landowner, then we've already mapped out where those places are. So I don't know of a specific, unit that's geologic survey within DNR. There could be another one in the state government. I'm just not aware of it, but we definitely do a lot of mapping and are interested in different landscapes. All right. So let's go on. I hope that answered your question. Let's see. Okay, so let's dig into the owls. What do people typically think of owls? Lots of things. One of the first ones that are characteristics that comes to mind is that they're wise. And they are fairly smart, but they are a bird. They do have bird brains too. But I think part of why people have attributed that characteristic to owls is because if you look at this barred owl picture here, that's got those concentric circles around its eyes that are actually used to funnel sound to their ears. They kind of look like glasses. And we seem to liken people, who've got glasses on as being really smart. So that's part of how they're used in culture. And I found this cute little poem from the 1930s. A wise old owl lived in an oak. The more he saw, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Now, wasn't he a wise old bird? And there's also a newer book from, I think, 2023. And it's What an Owl Knows. I just got it, so I haven't read it. But I'm looking forward to reading that. So if that's something, if you really love owls or know an owl lover, that might be worth looking into for them. Some people think owls are just spooky. We just had Halloween, and you see owl motif along with the bats and other creepy things. And then part of the reason for that is just they come out at night. They see a whole lot better than we do. So if you're outside in the dark and you feel like something's looking at you, there may be something looking at you. Not just an owl, there could be other nocturnal animals too. If you've ever had an owl that's got a white underside, like a barn owl, fly over you and you get a flash of white, to some people, especially in the olden days, that looks like a ghost. And there are some cultures that think of owls as bad omens. Like if you see or hear an owl, then there's impending doom or even death. So that's kind of another way of thinking of owls. And then on the flip side of that, there's cultures like Native Americans that believe owls are protectors and messengers. And I know in Japanese and other cultures, they think of owls as bringing good fortune, wealth, and prosperity. So this artwork on the left, I think the artist's name is Trevor Husband. That's a really cool piece of Native American owl art. And then on the right is just an item I found on Amazon, just doing a quick search. It says, "This is an owl figurine that brings financial fortune and good luck. Owls are considered lucky birds worldwide, and we have crafted this owl in gold, a color believed to, I think that that's misspelled, attract wealth in Japan." And yeah, lots of different ways of thinking of owls. But the owls themselves have no clue about any of this. They're just living their lives. And so these are burrowing owls, and they're just kind of looking at us like, why are you staring at me? What's all the fuss? But there are scientific, biological reasons to be excited and fuss about owls. So one thing that fascinates us about owls, and really any bird, or most birds do fly. So everything about them, their physical characteristics, is adapted to allow them to fly. So they've got lightweight body covering, these feathers. They lay eggs rather than carrying young inside their bodies like mammals do. They have hollow bones. That's what's in this lower left picture here. So they do have like cross beams, basically. They're very strong, but they're lightweight compared to, say, a human bone or a mammal bone. And even their beak is part of that equation. So rather than having teeth, which are really heavy, or basically bones, then they've got this beak instead. And all of those things help them be lightweight so that they can fly more readily. And on the right here, that's a female snowy owl. Beautiful, beautiful creature. All right, so that's one fascinating thing. And then owls have almost silent flight. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this, if you've ever had one fly over your head and you didn't hear a thing, but you just felt this breeze all of a sudden on a otherwise still night. And then maybe you heard it on the other side of the woods. And that is because their feathers are basically frayed on the edges. So unlike, say, a hawk or an eagle, if you hear them flapping their wings, you're going to hear this whoosh. You're going to hear the wind moving. It's like cutting through the wind. But with these fringes, it doesn't make that sound. It just the wind goes through it. There's not as much resistance up against the wing. And if any of you want to do a little experiment about this, you can take a piece of rope, just a regular, like, taut, non-frayed piece of rope, and swing it around, and you'll hear it cutting through the wind. If you take another piece of rope, like the one on the bottom right here, that's kind of old and tattered, and you swing that one around, you'll hardly hear it. So that kind of mimics the differences between, the birds of prey, hawk feathers versus the owl feathers. They are super well camouflaged. You probably have to just really focus, especially on this screech owl on the left. Super well camouflaged. It's amazing. You would never notice that, if this bird was up in a tree and you're just walking by without any movement or anything. It's not hooting, it's just sleeping. It doesn't want to be bothered. So it blends in super well. And then on the right is a great gray owl. We don't have those here, but they're amazing. They're like super huge. But it's just fascinating to me. And so their plumage will basically match their preferred habitat typically. And it works very well. All right, they are adapted to hunt and seize prey. So the word raptor is derived from Latin word rapere, I think is how you say that, rapere. I didn't take Latin in high school. But that word means to seize. And so that is what they do. And so the owl foot is on the right here, and that arrangement with 2 toes forward and 2 back is called zygodactyl. And they can actually move one of those back toes forward if they need to. It's just depending on the size prey and what kind of grasp they have to have. Whereas a hawk, and really most birds in general, they've got their three toes forward and 1 in the back. And that does help with perching, but that's a little bit different toe arrangement. So I don't know that you're ever going to come across just a foot and wonder what it is, but stranger things have happened, right? So it's just kind of a neat feature to know about. All right, what do owls eat? Uh, you can probably guess that, they are birds of prey and they do like mammals. That's got the most bang for the bucks, or the, most calories per effort, most nutrition per effort. So, you're going to see a lot of barred owls in this presentation because that's what I have the most experience with. And these are pictures I took in my front yard. I have a very wooded front yard, and I'm in a neighborhood. I'm on an acre and a third. I'm not in, anywhere in the wilderness or anything like that. So the picture on the left is barred owls sitting on the electrical pole here. That is sadly a baby possum. So, and then the one in the middle, this was during courtship season, and one of the owls was handing the other a headless squirrel. So, we actually use that in our social media. We're on Facebook. I think it's just Georgia Wildlife is the name of the Facebook page. And I think we captioned it something like, "Nothing says I love you quite like a headless squirrel." So I know it's ridiculous. Um, And then I had no idea I had so many shrews in my yard until I started seeing the owls catch them. These are all these little critters that are, in the leaves, and I don't see them, I don't hear them, but the owls are amazingly adept at finding them. So that's what's in the bottom middle. And then over to the right at the nest box is chipmunk delivery. So those are favorite prey items for pretty much any owl. But there are other things that you would never know that they ate, or never, you know, have a clue that they ate. So smaller owls like the screech owls, of course, are going to go after smaller prey like lizards, salamanders even. But even the larger ones, larger birds, they're eating, aquatic creatures. So this barred owl in the middle has a fish. And I've also seen them get crayfish and frogs. And obviously, there's not as much meat on that, but in lean times, it's something. And then also they do go after birds, but not a lot. So, for example, I've got a barred owl nest box in my front, and I've got all kind of bird feeders in the back. And I've never seen them interact. And the times I've watched videos of, like live streams of the birds bringing prey to the nest, out of, I don't know, 200 different prey items, two or three might be songbirds. So it's not a huge thing on their diet. They do go after snakes as well. So snakes can be pretty meaty. When I went to UGA to get my wildlife management degree, we had a wildlife supper every year, and someone made snake stew, and it was like the mystery meat, and I did not try that. But they're solid muscle, so when you eat meat, it's typically some sort of muscle, and so there you go. It must be tasty. All right. Now, owls, they can't digest everything, the fur, the bones, claws, maybe even. So when they eat something, and a lot of times they eat it whole, just goes down the hatch, then the parts that they can't digest basically form a pellet. And the parts that they can digest go on through, through the intestines. But what they can't digest, they cough up as a pellet. So here's this lovely picture of a barn owl coughing up a pellet. And so if you happen to see pellets on the ground, then you might have a nest tree there, a cavity tree there. But a lot of times you don't, because they're not necessarily coughing them up at the nest site. They're just out and about doing their thing, and then whack, there it goes. So I don't know if any of you have ever dissected an owl pellet, but it's pretty cool. So I worked as a naturalist at Charlie Elliott Wildlife Center in Mansfield, which is east of Atlanta, for about 13 years. And on the property, we had some old barns that were off limits to the public. And in one of the barn lofts, there was just tons of barn owl pellets. And so I would go up there every year and collect them. And I would put them in a toaster oven a designated toaster oven. Like there was notes all over it and Sharpie, like, do not put human food in here. And I would bake them basically. I want to say it was like 400 degrees or something, but outside, not in a building because it's super stinky. But that would kill any little parasites or whatever that's in there. And then I would have educational programs for the public where we would dissect these. And here's one of the pellets there. I mean, you can just look closely and you can see, these are little rodent teeth here. Um, it's just amazing what's in there. Sometimes you'll find a bird skeleton instead of a mammal skeleton. So if you ever get a chance to do that, it's pretty fun. And there's even online, there is an owl pellet bone sorting chart that you can look up. And so you can, get all these little itty bitty pieces and try and match them to the shape of, say a rodent, a mole, a shrew, a bird. And it doesn't have every prey item on here, but it's still pretty cool to look at. All right. So the other thing a lot of people are super excited about is that owls can turn their head all the way around, people say. Not quite, but almost. So they have twice the neck vertebrae that we do. We have 7 neck vertebrae. And so, but they have 14. So we can, if we tried to turn our head around without hurting ourselves, you're basically going to be able to put your chin to each shoulder. Maybe. You might hear your neck pop. I know I would because I'm looking ahead at the computer screen too much or I'm driving too much. I need to remember to loosen it up. But anyway, so we basically go 180 degrees of a circle. Now with that, the extra neck vertebrae that the owl has, they can twist a lot farther, about 270 degrees. So a full circle would be 360, so it's not quite that far. But anyway, so that's one thing that fascinates people. But birds of prey in general, a lot of birds have extra neck vertebrae. So it's not just owls, but I think it's because their eyes are forward facing that it just looks like, I don't know, it looks funkier than say if a hawk with eyes more on, set on the side of its head or is turning around. I don't know. It doesn't look as strange for some reason. All right, what else do we love about owls? They have binocular vision. So basically they can see in depth really well, and that's going to help them hunt their prey. Well, versus something like a woodcock or a sparrow whose eyes are further on the side of their head. And they're a prey species. They need to just see any kind of movement around them way better. That's what they're focused on. They don't want to be eaten. But the owl is the predator. So they've got to really be able to see crisp and clear and at various depths, which they can do very well. And then not all owls are nocturnal, but most of them are, or some are dawn and dusk, which we call crepuscular. But the ones that do come out at night, they have a little bit different arrangement of cells in their eyes than we do. You basically have what's called rod cells in your eyes, and they're shaped like rods, and they are responsible for detecting light. So, and then you've got cone cells, which I guess are cone shaped, and they are the color detecting cells. So we have fewer rods than owls do, and they have fewer cone cells than we do. So they can't see the color as well, but they can see in low light a whole lot better than we can. All right, they also have excellent hearing. Not all owls, but most have asymmetrical ears. And you're like, where are the ears? So that's why I put these little swaths here so you could see what the ears look like. They don't have external ears like we do. But if you were to peel away, just kind of use your hand to around the edge of the owl's face here and push the feathers forward, there is a big old ear there. And I mean, it's like, whoa. I mean, the first time I saw that, I was like, holy cow, because you can't see that otherwise. So they can hear very well. And with that asymmetry, then you see them doing the head bobbing. They're kind of like echolocating. It's just really fun to watch, I think. They got style, Now, great horned owls, their ears are not asymmetrical. And people think that those little feather tufts are their ears, but they're not. They're called plumicorns. And they're for camouflage, and they can maybe tell another owl like how they're feeling. If they're miffed, then they might be down, kind of like a cat or something. If they're alert, then they're up. So they do have some purpose. All right. So let's get into the actual species that we have here. We've got four that live here year round. We've got the eastern screech owl, and they come in two color phases. The one on the left that's kind of a reddish brown, they call it rufus. And then the other one is gray. And these are little jobbers. You know, the biggest they get is yay big. Um, I don't know the exact, maybe 5, 6 inches, something like that. And so a lot of people think, oh, it's a baby owl, but that is full grown. And they are spunky. And they remind me, those of you who are my age or thereabouts, of the Looney Tunes Marvin the Martian. Just the one that says, "You're making me very angry." That guy. They're just these little tough guys. Um, and then the next in size would be the barn owl. That's the ghost like one. It's got the white face and the white underside. And their numbers are actually going down in Georgia. They're not as solid as they used to be, but they are a global species. You can find barn owls all across the globe. And then the barred owl will be the next biggest. And they're decent size. If you're not used to seeing them, if you see one, you'll be like, "Whoa, that's a big bird." But even bigger than that is the great horned. And so those are the four that we have here year round. And if you hear one, it would most likely be one of those. Now there are a few species that are just more incidental. So northern saw-whet owls, I think they're even smaller. They're smaller than our screech owls. They're adorable. But a friend of mine who's a federally licensed bird bander who lives in Lamar County, which is Barnesville, south of Atlanta, he's been able to capture them in mist nets and ban them for years. But it's not a common thing. I don't know why they're in that one pocket there. Burrowing owls are pretty small. They're going to be way far south Georgia, more common into Florida. And then these others, short-eared and long-eared, really unusual, but they're again a possibility. If you go to ebird.org, which is a citizen science program run by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, you can look up these bird species and zoom in on the map to get a general idea of where they've been reported. And if you see one, you can report it on there. You can either do it online or you can download an app for your phone. Snowy owls, the times I've heard about them are, just really infrequently, but on the coast. And a lot of times, it's awesome to see them because they're just so beautiful. But it usually means that they're struggling a little bit. Maybe there's bad, like unusually bad weather further north. They've basically had to come south to try and find food because they're not getting by in their normal range. So hopefully they make it if they come down this far. But that's always a concern because they wouldn't be here unless they were struggling. All right, so let's get into how if there's any owls around you. I know at the beginning, some of you knew what species you had, but there may be others who don't, or you haven't heard one yet. And so I'm going to pull up my playlist here, and we'll start with the smallest and then go to the biggest. So the screech owl has what's referred to as kind of like a horse whinny. And it sounds a little spooky to some people. And it also has a monotone trill. So let me play that for you.
Screech owl.
Oh, hang on. So not a typical hoot, right? Yeah, and this is a little bird. I mean, it's got really a loud voice, so it's pretty fascinating. So you're more likely to hear these birds than you are to see them. Not that it's impossible to see them, but there again, it's either dusk or it's completely dark. Um, So yeah, the only owls that you could see during the day that are more diurnal than they are nocturnal would be a few of those rare ones that I told you about. The burrowing owl comes out during the day, and so does the short-eared. But pretty much everything else is nocturnal. So you're more likely just to hear them. All right. Now, the barn owl. These were the first owls I ever took care of as a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. I had my state and federal permits to take care of injured or orphaned anything really. I had, but mostly I got birds of prey. There's not many bird of prey rehabbers anymore, and that's unfortunate because they do need a lot of help. But these little barn owls, they were quite demanding and quite noisy, and it'll raise the hair on the back of your neck if you heard this in the dark.
Barn owl.
Holy moly, that's loud. Can y'all hear that okay? Okay, awesome. Here's some hissing sounds for you because the other wasn't scary enough. Goodness. And then here's some little twitters that they make. That sounds pretty sweet, actually, compared to the other noises they make.
Barn.
Okay, so getting up in size, and to me, probably one that's more common. Excuse me, let me get a drink of water real quick. Are the barred owls. They're super adaptable, and it's in popular culture too. This picture on the right is actually a picture I took at Chattahoochee Nature Center at their visitor center. I think it was downstairs. They have all kind of cool animal exhibits and aquariums. And I just thought that was the cutest thing. But it lists there kind of what the mnemonic is for what a barred owl sounds like. And they make lots of different noises, but it's who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? And I don't do that very well. So let me play the call instead.
Owl.
So that last part, we call it, or I call it monkey squabbling. So they make some crazy sounds. And there's even one that's not on this recording, but they call it a whistle shriek. And it's when they're really upset, they're, territorial, or I don't know, just something's upset them. I'm not even going to try and duplicate it, but it's basically this woo. That's the best I can do. It does not sound like it sounds like, I don't know, some crazy neighbor out there or something having too much fun. But yeah, they make some crazy sounds. And there are ways to tell a female from a male. The female's call is a little richer, I think. And at the end, it has kind of like, was it vibrato? It's a little bit of a little trilly sort of at the end. And in that recording, I can play it again if you want. But basically, at the beginning, you hear a female in the foreground, and then you hear the male, which is a shorter, honestly, just kind of duller sound in the background. So let me play that real quick and see if you notice that.
Barred owl.
So a lot of times you'll hear them duetting. I think of it like they're it's playing Marco Polo. Like, where are you, Marco Polo? And sometimes the males can sound, at least in my yard, I don't know, kind of wonky. My husband and I hear one that we refer to as speech impediment owl. It just sounds different. I don't know if he learned the call wrong or what. But really fun to hear that. Sometimes it's in the middle of the night and it wakes me up and I'm still smiling. Like I don't even care that it woke me up. It's awesome. Okay. Last but not
Linda,
least. Uh-huh.
a panelist asked, or I mean, a guest asked, what do the monkey squabbles represent?
It could be part of mating, calls back and forth. They're just excited, or it could even be like one male trying to shoo out another male from the territory. They're very territorial when they're pairing up to breed and nesting, and they don't put up with intruders very well. So it's, I mean, I can't without asking them, which I don't know that they would tell me, but it's just like a heightened conversation, you could say. It's rather than just calling the Marco Polo, it's like, well, I got something to tell you. So that's how I think of it anyway. Let's see. Okay, so the great horned owl is really monotone. It's just a series of monotone hoots, and to me, it sounds like they're saying, "I'm awake. Are you awake too?" And like the other owls, they make other crazy sounds too. But it's you can't mistake this. It doesn't sound like any of the others at all.
Great horned owl.
You may have noticed that in that duet, there's one that's got a lower pitch and one that's got a higher pitch. The male has the lower pitch. The female that's responding to his call has the higher pitch. And they do make other crazy sounds too. Let's see. So, hear that squawk? I don't know if you can hear the beak snapping. That's a crazy sound right there.
Burrowing owl.
Oh, we weren't getting into the burrowing owl. All these sounds, by the way, you can look up online. Or you can use Merlin, which is a really cool app that works on artificial intelligence to identify sounds that you're hearing. So it's free to download. And you basically open up the app and it's got this little microphone and you click on the microphone. It's got to be a clear enough sound. There can't be like leaf blowers and airplanes. But it's pretty cool. It'll identify it to sound. And it's not 100% accurate, but it's pretty good. And so the bird species will pop up on the screen, and then every time it calls again, it'll highlight that bird species. Like if you've got multiples, things calling at the same time. So it's pretty cool. But you can also go to this really awesome Cornell website called allaboutbirds.org and look up any kind of bird species you want. And it's got like general ID information, natural history information, maps of where they live, different times of the year even. And then it's got a whole series of recordings of some different sounds. So that's kind of fun to poke around on.
Linda, we had a lot of chat about great horned owls. Do you want me to share it?
Yes, please do.
Um, Jennifer says, do great horned owls hide in magnolia trees, swoop out, then swoop back in? She saw this owl while walking her palm, which I think means Pomeranian,
Yep.
heard birds as a warning, and he quickly swooped back into the tree when he saw me.
That's certainly possible. Great horned owls, as big as they are, I won't say they typically go after larger prey, but it's certainly, I mean, if they're hungry enough, it's certainly a possibility. So I have known of them to take rabbits. So a small dog or a smaller cat is fair game. Or at least they're going to investigate it. I don't know how often they actually go after it, but with you standing there, that gave your little dog some protection. And we will address that a little more, things you can do to, if you're worried about your pets getting snagged. But I wouldn't say a Pomeranian is their normal prey item. What else you
Linda,
got?
how far away are they when we hear them?
Oh,
Like, what's
gosh.
their range?
So a barred owl, for example, and I imagine this would be similar for some of the others, during breeding season when they're nesting, it's pretty tight. It's like maybe a square mile, but it does get larger in non-breeding season. I mean, they're having to hunt, they're having to find the food wherever they can. But I don't think they would go probably much more than 3 or 4 square miles. I guess it depends on the species. You would have to look up for, great horned owls specifically. But as far as when you're hearing them, um, I mean, I would think it would be within a quarter mile, possibly. They do have loud voices, but it's not so loud you're going to hear it from like 5 miles away or anything like that. So they're pretty close. They're in your neighborhood.
That's awesome. And then somebody commented saying that juvenile great horn has a really unique sound.
Yeah, I think it's closer to that kind of, I don't know, whelping squawk, weep, weep, something like that. I really need to stop trying to imitate these sounds because I don't do a great job. Hopefully that was useful in some form or fashion. But yeah, you can go online. Like I say, you go to that allaboutbirds.org, and I'm pretty sure they'll have on one of the sound recordings, it'll say juvenile, and you can listen to your heart's delight. So, because they are big babies. When they're hungry and they fledge, they're like, all right, now, where's my food? And they will make sure the parents know that they are hungry and make all kind of fun sounds. All right, so we mentioned Merlin. Let's get into why they call. We know they call, we hear them, but why are they calling? What are some reasons? You guys can type in the chat. We've got some hints here on the screen. Yep, find a mate, mating, territory, food. Yep, hunting. That pretty much covers it for the most part. So right now, it sounds early, for birds to be mating, but owls are starting to reacquaint themselves with each other. They are, for the most part, monogamous. And if they, as long as one doesn't die, and that happens, they will pair up again with the same one from a previous year. And but they're not necessarily as tied to the hip, as they are when they're actually raising a family. But it's not early, for them to kind of be rechecking their territories and going Marco Polo and all that. It's just starting to be that season. So that's the pairing of the barn owls here. This little guy is a fledgling barred owl, and it's squawking. It makes more of a high pitched squeak. And so if you hear that in the trees, say in like April or May or even June, sometimes, you'll know you've got young out there. And then territorial. So, to scare off another bird. So this is a diurnal short-eared owl chasing a northern harrier. So we have northern harriers here in the winter. So if you ever go by like an old field and you see a bird of prey with a white rump that looks like it's hovering, like it's just levitated. I have no idea how it does this, even when it's not windy. It looks like it's just hovering over the grasses looking for something, a little mouse munching or something. Super cool bird if you happen to come across those. So yeah, that's mainly why they make all these fun sounds. So once they've bred, which is going to be, like late winter, basically, they will go into a nest cavity, whether that's a hollowed out tree or a nest box. So this storyline, this life cycle that I'm about to share with you is from my front yard, in my nest box that I put up. So usually they start going in there around mid-February. You're not going to see a whole lot for a while. And it wasn't till later in February I started to see the tail feathers of the female poking out of the entrance here. Otherwise, they kind of quieted down at this point. They've found their counterpart and have bred and are starting to raise a family, and they really don't want a whole lot of attention at that point. So this would be the first sign of of, hey, there's babies in the making. All right, so I got to tell a story about a local tree guy who he cut down a tree, or one of his workers didn't know it was a cavity tree. Turned out there were barred owls in there, and there were two eggs, and the adult flew away. One of the eggs got crushed, the other one didn't, and this guy just stuck it in his pocket. He was going to bring it home and show his kids, and they were about to go off on spring break, so he just kind of like put it on the kitchen counter, not thinking it was viable. And then it started pipping, and then of course he's like, oh, what do I do with this? So the owner of the tree company went to UGA, the Warnell School of Forestry and Natural Resources, with me back in, what was that, 90s. And so he called me and was like, what do I do with this? So I had been a licensed wildlife rehabber for many, many years, but I knew nothing about hatching no barred owl eggs. But by golly, it was a weekend and this thing needed help. So I figured it out. I borrowed an incubator from Pike County Extension Office, which is south of us. I live in Griffin. And then lo and behold, this thing actually did make it. But let me let you hear what it sounds like. Hear that knocking sound? Oh. So you can see its little egg tooth there. It's just like part of its beak. They call it an egg tooth. It's supposed to help them get out of the egg. This guy had trouble though, because like I say, it was in some guy's pocket and then on his kitchen counter. It wasn't being properly tended to. You didn't have the adult, the female rotating it around. And so, and it probably wasn't the right temperature or the right humidity. And so I did the best I could with this incubator, but it probably, was at a disadvantage. And this little guy, unfortunately, had trouble getting out on his own. And it's very tricky. It's very risky, I should say, to try and flick away those the parts of the egg, because there's egg vessels in there. And if the bird is attached to the side of the egg, then you could be injuring it somehow. But so there again, I was just like, oh, didn't know if this was going to work out or not, but had to give it a try. So I think after about 16 hours, I started flicking at it. Oh, hang on, let me go forward again. And success. So top left, I probably picked more than I should have apart, but this is the baby barred owl in the egg, on all squashed up. There's his beak and his front wing, and this is the back leg and his foot. And we want them to be able to come out on their own as much as possible. They need to develop those muscles. And so I just left him like that, and he did work his way out. And here he is. They dry their feathers out and look like little floofs. Their eyes are not open at that point. And I kept weighing him to make sure that he was eating well. I had to dedicate a blender to mouse slurry. But hey, anything for this little guy. But foremost on my mind was, we don't want this thing to grow up thinking it's human. We want it to know it's an owl, and we want it to have a good quality life out in the wild. So I was just getting it by until I could get it to a better situation, and tried getting it to a rehabber who's, I think, on this call. But I think she had a tree fall in her house, if I remember right, and then ended up having to take it back. So because my permit wasn't up to date, I was trying to get it to a currently licensed, permitted raptor rehabber. And like I said earlier, there's not many of those. So I was like, okay, well, let me just do what I can, and just keep this thing alive. But I wanted to get it somewhere, preferably in another nest, an existing nest, before its eyes opened on like day 6 or 7. So that was my goal. And that's what ended up happening. I was just doing things I'd never tried before, but thought, let me just give this little guy a chance. So I looked online and I found a live barred owl nest cam called Smyrna Barred Owls, and it was in Smyrna, Georgia. And this girl didn't know me from a hole in the wall. And I just messaged her and I told her the situation. I was like, "Are you up to adding a little fosterling to your box?" And lo and behold, she was like, "Sure." I'm like, "Oh, really? Okay." So I had my concerns because ideally the nestlings that are in that box are the same age. And even a week apart, they can be quite a bit different in size. In fact, the eggs are laid asynchronously, so they hatch out asynchronously. So you could even have a bigger barred owl and a little one in the same clutch. But these guys were a little bit bigger, but it was the only one I knew of, and I loved that I might be able to watch this little guy grow up. So I was not 100% sure on this thing, but I'm like, okay, let's do it. So her husband climbed up this ladder. He was in construction and fortunately had a good ladder. And this is his hand putting what we named him Pippin in the box. And you can see how small he is compared to these other two. So I was like, oh my goodness, it was such a nerve-wracking ordeal. I thought, are they going to think it's a chicken nugget and start eating it? And what is mama going to think about it? And she was a little confused. It was kind of funny to watch. She came in and was like, wait a minute, I thought I only had two. Where did this one come from? But then she got over it real quickly. And long story short, it all worked out beautifully. I was able to watch them. So the first night in the box, Pippin and his new siblings, they all huddled together to stay warm. Nobody tried to eat each other. Mama came back with food. I actually left a couple white mice in there for good measure. And I thought, oh, this little guy, he's not going to be able to compete with his siblings very well. He's so small. They're going to eat more than him. And, I just had all these concerns. Turned out he was like a scrappy little dude. He would just like a football player, just push through the center of the two of them to the front where the mother was. And he got plenty of food and he did fledge the nest box. And so that's the best we can hope for. Meanwhile, I had a similar story happening in my nest box, but I didn't have a nest cam to know what was going on, nor a 40-foot, 50-foot ladder to get up to put it up there. So that's why I worked with the people that had the nest box cam. So, but I found out, in retrospect, that the timing was about the same for both boxes. So I mentioned that those other barred owls in Smyrna, that they fledged, and mine fledged about the same time. So they will stay in that box and grow for 4 to 6 weeks, and they do get a little tight in there after a while. So here's some video just this past spring. I think this was early May, and they're like, I don't know about this. That's pretty far down there. And not all nest boxes, there's his sibling, like, wait, let me look at this. They don't all necessarily call for this branch, but I found it to be helpful for them to kind of ease out and ease back in and ease out. They're not 100%, like, it's not like wood ducklings that just leap out and say hello world. They seem to like to go in and out and get used to the idea first. So let's see. And here's when they're kind of thinking about it. So there's usually one, like I mentioned earlier, that's a little bit older than the other. Sometimes there's more than two. I've had one with three in one clutch. So that's the parent, one of the parents, I'm assuming the female, coming to feed them at the box. And this little guy got out and he's just not like, he's like, I don't know about this. But anyway, they do eventually branch out. Let's see. Oh, she's just preening him in that one. I forgot that was a video. So, yeah, I think she had, I don't know if that was the baby possum from the picture earlier that she brought in, but then she started preening them. So it's very sweet. And by the way, I'm watching this all from my kitchen window. I've got not a fancy camera, but it's just like they call it a bridge camera. It's like a point and shoot, but it's like 35 millimeter. It's a Panasonic Lumix. But so I'm not disturbing them. And, it's pretty high up in the tree though. But so it's pretty cool to be able to watch them. All right, so here's one that branched out. You can hear all the fun spring sounds, and we're not hearing that now, unfortunately. They're super gangly and super awkward. I mean, they've just got to learn. They've got to build those muscles. Uh, you know, I mean, they've been in a box their whole life up to this point. They're only about a month and a half old. So they grow really fast. I mean, you saw that little scrawny thing that came out of the egg. So usually one leaves before the other. This was an older box I had. I've upgraded to a fancy tongue and groove cedar box. Uh, but yeah, this one's going, how the heck did you get up there? So, he gets a little lonely at some point in there. And I've even seen the parents not feed them as much, trying to lure them out if it's like getting to be a little past time. Um, so yeah, this is fledging, like I say, in early May. And it's hard to watch. I'm just like, oh, it's like watching a tightroper. But they gotta do their thing. We don't intervene at all. All right. Let's see. So here's a crazy thing that I never realized until I had these owls in my front yard. If they, sometimes because they're just so awkward, they do fall. Even if they branch out of the box and go up, heavy wind or just losing their footing, they fall. And they instinctively know this is dangerous for me to stay here on the ground like this, like predators coming by. And notice too, by the way, this is daytime. Like when the owls are nesting, those parents are like hunting. It feels like 24/7. Both of them together are hunting and bringing food back. And I don't know when they sleep. They just like get like little quick shut eye. So that's why these pictures are during the day. But they know, these owlets know instinctively they got to get off the ground and they can't fly. So they use their sharp talons and their beak to work their way up a trunk. And they're exhausted. I mean, it's like hard to watch. You just hate that they're struggling so much. They've had such a cush life up to now. And then they're like, what's this about? You know, I want to spoil them, but I have to be careful and just let them be wild, right? So they'll work their way up until they can find a lateral branch that they can rest on. But so this guy's just clinging to the side of a tree. You can hear our trash pickup or something in the background. Oh, and a wood thrush. There's a really pretty wood thrush sound. So he'll work his way up. So it just takes breaks in between. He'll start climbing here in a second. There he goes. Got a little more gusto. And it's the craziest looking thing to me. I do see while we're waiting for him to get to his branch, I see someone asked, do they need different kinds of boxes? Yes, and not all of them use boxes. I'll get into that in just a little bit, but you can go online and see the different styles, whether you want to build it yourself or you want to buy one. All right, little guy, I'm going to fast forward you. Whee, let's get you up. There he goes. He's got this little tiny branch, but hey, man, it's something. That's crazy. And he'll probably fall from there and have to do it again. But that's all part of the gig, life's tough. During this time, if anything or anyone comes near their baby, mama's right there. They are the most incredible parents. And they will do this like, don't you mess with my baby. So yeah, just if you see one on the ground, try and give it a chance to do its thing. Keep your pets away from it in the meantime. I guess in an absolute pinch, if it's just out there like all day and not getting back up, if there's, if you want to quickly try and put it on a lower branch or something just to get it off the ground, that might be all right. But you're going to have this guy staring you down or gal staring you down. So, got to be cautious. So they hang out. Yeah, go ahead.
We had quite a few questions, and one that I think relates to what you just said is, do both males and females sit on the eggs? And I'll add a little more to that. Is it the females that stick around before they fledge?
So it's the females that incubate the eggs, but the male does most of the hunting during that time. So he's bringing food back for the female. And then, of course, when the young hatch, they're both out there hunting and feeding them. And let's see, what was the other? Oh, so they stick around. The crazy thing, you think of most songbirds like bluebirds. Once they hatch, I mean, it's within weeks that they're out on their own, and then the bluebird parents are starting another clutch. Even I've seen juvenile bluebirds at my mealworm feeders, and the parents are, especially the male is like so attentive and just gently giving them mealworms. By the time he's got another nest, which is a few weeks from then, he's dive bombing those juvenile bluebirds to get the heck out of there. But these guys, they will stay with their parents, and both parents will tend to them for up to 6 months. Is a very huge investment. And I don't know the specifics with the other owls, but I suspect it's probably pretty similar. So it takes a while for them to learn to fly, and then it probably takes even longer for them to learn to hunt. So it's a huge, huge investment. And I mean, I continue to hear these guys squawking in my trees as they get older. So this one's, let's see, a little bit older. The parents are right there, watching over them. So they will definitely dive bomb anything that comes too close. And they're listening for if the owls are calling. So these are just some cute pictures I got in my yard. And then here's the pair. So to answer your question visually, do both parents stick around? They do. This is a really windy day. So all the while they're trying to hunt, they've got other birds mobbing them. So I believe this video is about to show a blue jay that doesn't like them around. So yep, there's the blue jay. That one didn't mess with them too bad, but sometimes they'll just outright peck them on the head, and the owl just sits there like, all right, yeah, whatever. It's like they're just little gnats. But yeah, you can imagine a little fledgling trying to stay on the branch during that high wind. So, we do have some crazy storms in the spring. Anything else?
Yeah, we have quite a few questions.
Okay.
It's been a real active chat, and I appreciate everybody for contributing.
Yeah.
So somebody asked, how big is their territory?
So during nesting season or family rearing, it's about a square mile. And this is, give or take, it's going to depend on the quality of the habitat and if they're able to find everything they need in that area. So, if you see a pair, it's probably the only pair around for at least a mile. There could be some overlap, and especially when it's not breeding season, but they're territorial. They don't want to share. I mean, it means their survival. They've got to have as much food in that space as possible. And if they've been successful nesting in the same spot, from one year to the next, you can pretty much count on them coming back. Like the owls that I'm hearing in my yard this time of year, I'm pretty sure the ones that are going to be using my box. Anything else?
Yeah, and there's a couple questions, 2 or 3, about climate change and how that affects them. The first one is deforestation, specifically in Atlanta. How does that affect how they look for a new home?
So habitat loss is the number one reason for any species to decline, and it is certainly happening around Atlanta. Some owls are more adaptable than others. I know screech owls are fairly adaptable. They'll use suburbia, and barn owls are too. I don't know so much in the barn owls. They're more specific to like more remote agricultural fields, with barns. And then great horn, they seem to prefer a little bit thicker, deeper forest. But basically, some will adapt and some won't as well. But they find what they can, just like any other creature. That's why you see deer in neighborhoods like crazy, because there's nowhere else for them to go. or they just don't make it sometimes. So climate change, I don't know specifically how that affects the owls, but it does affect what we call phenology, so the timing of things, down to like, when a flower blooms and goes to seed, or when the insect comes to that flower, overlapping with when the bird needs to feed their young insects. There have been some shifts in that. And there's actually a citizen science project called Budburst that you can look up online, and it basically is studying phenology by looking at common plants and when they bloom. There's also another citizen science project called Nest Watch, where you monitor a nest, and it's a little more tight protocol on that. You don't want to cause any harm while you're doing that. But I would imagine there's some sharing of data there.
Well, that
Yep.
goes along with, are some owls mating and nesting earlier, perhaps responding to climate change?
I've not noticed it being earlier than what we have on record, but they do nest quite a bit earlier than say songbirds. And in fact, those of you just birds of prey in general, if you've ever watched the Berry Eagle nest cam, you'll see them incubating eggs with snow all over them, all over their back, and it looks really weird to us, but that's pretty normal actually. So yeah, it
And
gives
then,
them, if you think about it, like for the barred owls, if they're rearing their young for up to 6 months, they almost need to start earlier, to have plenty of warm season to get them up and out on their own. Okay, what were you gonna say, Jen?
um, and then do owls become more aggressive during dramatic climate change time or food scarcity time?
I would imagine if they're in survival mode and they're not finding what they need, they could be more aggressive. But I would say it's more so when they're protecting a nest or their young. That's I had never heard of anybody like having an issue with a barred owl. And then I used to take live barred owls and other critters to different events as part of my naturalist job. And most of the time, it was like a great animal ambassador for people who were freaked out about critters, or just uncomfortable around critters. And you get this large, cutesy looking owl up close to somebody, and they're just like, oh, and they fall in love and they want to do everything they can to help wildlife. But I had this one person who was just like, ah! I mean, so like she had like a little mini, I don't know, PTSD going on. It turned out she had been swooped at, and the owl had actually clawed her in the head. She was like out jogging. I think it was even in the news. It was like in Buckhead or something. This was years ago. But it makes its circuits pretty much every year. So there are ways to protect yourself during that time, which I'll get into a little later. But that's when I would be the most concerned about them.
Are there owls that are more prominent during the winter time that we would see or hear?
All the ones I mentioned earlier, the residents and those less common ones would be ones you could see here in the winter. The less common ones, that would probably be the only time of year that you would see them because they breed further north. But the 4 resident owls, the screech, the barn, the barred, and the great horned, they're here year round. So yeah, you could see or hear them really any time of year, but there again, they're going to be more vocal when they're pairing up and mating.
I have 2 more questions for you. One is, owls eating from bird feeders that might have mealworms or insects that you would feed your cardinals or your bluebirds.
I've never seen that. Yeah, they don't typically go to a bird feeder, and you probably don't want to put meat out on a platform feeder. I don't know how great that would be. So screech owls of the 4, they're gonna maybe eat some insects. Even larger birds, if they're injured and they're grounded or something, like I got a red-tailed hawk one time that had a wing injury, and then it got stuck somehow in this guy's backyard. I think in a cross tie. I know that sounds really strange. This was years ago. But when I got the bird in, and they cough up pellets too, by the way, it basically had a bunch of beetle exoskeletons in its crop. So, that's not an ideal situation. But I've just never known of them coming to a feeder. They're a little more shy than that too. And there's plenty, especially if there's plenty of natural food out there, there's really no reason for them to. So,
I'm gonna let you move on.
all right. Good questions. Thank you guys. Okay. So I mentioned the parents are very attentive. So this one on the left, they are listening to their young, and even if they don't have any food, they'll go down and say, I'm here, it's all good. This picture on the right, this owl or owlet is probably 2 months or so, maybe 3, and still hanging out in the yard and still squawking, but definitely a whole lot stronger than before, definitely more sure-footed and able to fly short distances at that point. So I mentioned how protective owls are during their nesting season. If you have an issue like that one woman did with the owl swooping down, a simple fix is to wear a hat if you're going jogging, or just don't go that way. You know there's a nest nearby, and that was the case with the woman in Buckhead. Other thing you can do is, as crazy as it may look on a pretty spring day, just have an open umbrella, and that would be the case too if you're taking a really small dog out to walk or something and you're worried about an aerial predator. And if it's still coming down, you can like open and close it, open and close it. It's like makes like a flashing effect to the owl above or the hawk or whatever's, interested. So those are some simple ways that you can protect yourself. All right, so those of you who want to attract owls to your property, and this is barring that you have no chickens or small farm animals, because if you do, they're probably attracted to that already. That's like a grocery store. Hopefully no one's got that problem here on the call. But there's only so much you can do with your property. I understand we talked about this earlier about habitat loss and that there might be adjacent strips of land that are clear cutting trees and whatnot, and it's very sad. You just got to do the best you can with your property, unless you work with your zoning and planning department or something. It would be more of a long-term thing. Then maybe you can help protect some of the habitat. So each of these resident owls likes a little bit different area, but they're pretty adaptable too. So this is not hardcore here, but I mentioned earlier, it's like screech owls that do fine in woods and parks and backyards. Barn owls more specific on the open fields and the old structures like a barn. The barred owl, they're super adaptable, but if they had their preference, they would like a bottomland hardwood type forest, really mature trees with a stream, and that's exactly what I have here. So that's why I'm catering to them. I moved in this house in Griffin about 6 years ago. It was right before COVID, and the previous owners showed me a picture of some barred owlets in a tree in their front yard, and I was like, okay, I don't need to see the rest of the house. Sign me up. And so I just started paying more attention, and I heard them and saw them flying, in the tree canopy. And I'd never tried a nest box before, but I just stuck it up there, and we had to hire a tree guy because I was like, I want them to fly into it, So even though Cornell Lab of Ornithology says like 15, 20 feet is fine, I had to put mine 40 feet up, and lo and behold, they've been using it since, so it worked. But we do have a good habitat here for them. And then great horned, they prefer a little bit denser woods, but at times, but then they also have been found in open habitats. I mean, they're very widespread. They live in the desert even. So, they could be adaptable. I just don't hear or see them a whole lot, but maybe some of you, that's more common in your neck of the woods. So go with what kind of habitat you have. And certainly if you've heard them in your area, then that would be the ones to cater to if you want to have them, nesting or whatever. So if you have any dead trees or snags in your yard and they're not endangering any structures or, humans, then please leave those. Those are what the owls would naturally nest in. So Most of them are cavity nesters, but meaning they use a tree cavity or a nest box, but great horns are not. So they're just kind of using like this little crook in a tree. This was a picture down by the coast, as indicated by the Spanish moss that a coworker brought me to see this nest. That was super exciting. So that's order of business number one. If you don't have that, put up a nest box. I mean, you will not regret it. Just seeing these little, I call them my floofs. Every year I call them floof number one and floof number two, and sometimes there's a floof number three. It is like my favorite part of the spring, just about. And it's just super fun to watch them and know that you're helping them too. If you're not sure what kind of box plans you need for whatever owl is in your area, you can go to nestwatch.org. These are the barred owl nest box plans. But the screech owl, of course, is going to be a much smaller hole in different dimensions. The barn owl is going to be more like it's like a horizontal box with a bigger opening. And sometimes they don't even need that. They just need a loft and a barn, like the one I told you about earlier. And for that matter, if you want to put any kind of nest box or nesting platform up, this website is the bomb. I mean, it just tells you everything you need to know. If you're not a woodworker yourself, you could either hire someone, or my very first box, I got a kit off of Etsy and I put it together myself. So it just came with the parts. But like I say, I splurged eventually, because that one required recalking every season and like a coat of linseed oil and all that. And I just wanted something I didn't have to fool with all that. It was a little more tight. So I got the tongue and groove cedar. And that was a woodworker friend of ours that did that. You can find them online. They're usually going to be really expensive. So if you can make it yourself, that might save you some money.
How do
All
you
right.
keep squirrels out of your nest box, Linda?
Great question. You kind of don't, but the owls do. So it's really funny you asked that. I saw a gray squirrel nibbling on an acorn at the entrance of my nest box like 2 days ago. And then that night, I heard that whistle shriek I told you about, the whee, you like just like freak out. And it was one of my barred owls kicking him out, basically. We real quickly turned on a light. We don't like to shine lights at them, and we do red filtered if at all possible, because that doesn't bother their eyes. But the owl was sitting in the box then. So that solved that. They don't always get to it in time. So, they won't necessarily remove the materials that the squirrel shoves in there, but they might flatten it down. I mean, normally there's some sort of, leaves or wood chips or, broken branches in there, and especially in a natural hollowed out tree. And if you want to spoil your owls like I do, you can hire a tree guy or go up there and clean it out yourself. But you won't really need to until like winter's over, and that's a lot of times when the squirrels are going to be using it. I mean, you can't blame them, right? If it gets down to 7 degrees, they want to get out of that crazy weather. Better there than in your attic, right? If you're going to clean it out, like January would probably work okay, but probably you don't want to go messing with it too much later, because they're going to be wanting to use it soon after that. So I do put some wood shavings or like wood chips in the bottom of my box, about halfway between the floor and the opening there. They've got to be either pine or like aspen. You don't want to use cedar because it's got lots of oils in it, and that could be problematic for the young. So any other questions we got? Let's see. If you see a nest box, are they not as aggressive towards dogs and cats that they see normally? I don't know. I don't have any outdoor pets, so I can't really answer that from experience. But I can tell you, my husband and I, we're out in the yard all the time, and I think they are definitely used to us. Like even if they've got young out in the trees, they're not swooping down at us. It's just kind of like we're just part of the furniture. We're just part of their little habitat. It seems like they've become accustomed to us. And I guess as long as your dog's not actively seeking them out or, barking or whatever, I would think that would be the same case, but I can't say from experience. So good question. All right, here is a reason to keep your cats indoors and monitor your dogs outside. For one, the animals can get to fledgling owls. This is a little guy that fledged and did not make it to the tree, and he was sitting there quite a while. And so if I had outdoor pets, and especially if I wasn't home to see what was going on, that could be a bad day for that little owlet. But the reverse is true too, obviously. So, this has been a picture that this one in the center that's been going around the internet for a long time. And I think it was before AI, but I'm not sure. But long story short, it's not common for an owl to pick up a full-size cat. Maybe a kitten would be fair game. Same thing with a small dog, I mean, they don't weigh much, so they can't carry something as heavy as they are or heavier. They would have to be in a real bad, starvation mode or something, I would think, to go after that. But it is possible. And I mean, if I had a small animal that stayed outside, I would be concerned. I would try and keep it in, or at least monitor it as much as possible. And so I found, when I was doing a little bit of research on this, I found this spiky vest that apparently some people use. They say it's for coyotes, but I mean, I would think anything that tried to get that dog would think again, with that little vest on. So, but just the main thing is, don't leave them out at night, cats, dogs, whatever. If you have to go outside, they have to go potty or whatever, just be aware, of where they are and go out there with them if you can. You don't, better safe than sorry. All right, other things you can do to try and invite owls to your yard is have a large bird bath, and it does not have to be a fancy concrete one. It can be a bucket. I actually put out a $10 kiddie pool from Family Dollar in my backyard this past summer when it was really unusually hot. I think we had a drought. It felt like it went on for months. And I had barred owls going down to it, and I had deer drinking out of it. I put up a little Wi-Fi camera, those Blink cameras by Amazon. I stuck one up in the back of my yard, and amazingly, it still talks to my Wi-Fi at my house. And found out we had a family of red foxes back there, of course, raccoons and possums, and we have some armadillo. And there again, this is all going on in the neighborhood. You would never know it. It's dark, unless you hear them. And we have heard the red foxes screaming in the middle of the night. So that was like, whoa, that'll wake you up. But yeah, obviously have to keep it clean. If you don't want mosquitoes breeding in it, you just dump it out every couple days or so, and the larvae won't hatch. So, they like clean water just like we do. All right. Other things you can do is reduce your lawn size and mow less. You got to think about what these owls eat. If you want rodents around, if it's like too pristine and clear, like everything's neat as a pin, you're probably not going to have the rodents. And some people are like, well, I don't want rodents around. But if you've got natural pest control, then it all works out just fine. Like, I've never had rodents in the house. I don't see them. I'm amazed we still have squirrels and chipmunks because, man, those owls are hunting machines. And then also leave your leaves. You've probably heard that campaign before too. It's not just for the overwintering insects, but there's all the little prey items that live down in the leaves. And amazingly, with that good hearing that the owls have, they can locate them and not even have to see them and just go down and so yeah, that helps them. Something maybe you haven't thought about to help owls or really any kind of wildlife is to turn out your lights at night, or at least get more yellow like bug lights and put them on a motion detector so they're not out all night, because it actually can be pretty distracting. This campaign was promoted by Birds Georgia during migratory season, but it applies anytime. Any kind of unnatural light at night can be disturbing to their normal habits. So we have all these fun lights outside, and I won't let my husband turn them on. We drive each other nuts. But anyway, I think that does help because, our nest box is right outside the front, and we put it like deep enough in some trees that they don't feel overly exposed, but where we could still see them. And even if you have lights on in the house, if you want to, pull your blinds or your curtains, and that helps it from spilling out. All right. What do you do if you find an injured bird? This happens. And I can't tell you, unfortunately, how many owls I've seen get smacked by cars. They don't know to look both ways. The people throw food out in the medians, and then the critters, little prey go to it, and then they get smacked. And it unfortunately happens. Now, you guys are near Chattahoochee Nature Center in Roswell. That place has been around since I was in pre-K. I went on my first field trip there back in probably 1976 or something. So it's really fun to still be working on collaborating with them on different things. But they have a wonderful wildlife department there. They only do reptiles and birds of prey. They don't do small mammals or songbirds. But just give them a call. They would appreciate a donation. But you can also look online here. I've got a screenshot of the Georgia DNR website that helps you search for rehabbers. So Fulton County, there's just Chattahoochee Nature Center is the only one for raptors. There's another person down here, I think, that does small mammals. So you basically just click on your county, or if there's not anyone in your county, like these ones that aren't shaded, there are no licensed rehabbers there, then find an adjacent county. And so here's another one. If it's just a songbird, you can reach out to these folks. So if you have trouble transporting it, because a lot of times these rehabbers, they're covered up. They're not going to go on a wild goose chase after a bird. So you're going to have to help them out. You're going to take interest in it, then you got to follow it through. Hang on, I'm trying to move this over. So that means you may have to pick up the bird yourself. Obviously use caution doing that. A lot of birds of prey, when they're not feeling great, it's a little easier to do, but some of them have life in them too. So if you have something you can drape over them, wear gloves, have a box ready that's got some holes in it. In this case, this one just has, handles, but don't put the bird in the box and then start poking holes in it. Like, do that in advance. If you can put a crumpled up towel in the bottom of it, that helps them be a little more comfortable. They really don't like to go flat-footed. So you don't have to worry necessarily with a perch and all that, but just something where their feet can still be their normal shape. And then, have somewhere lined up to take it to. So other ways that you can help wildlife. If you don't have a wildlife license plate, consider getting one. They're $25 extra on top of your normal fees, and 80% of that goes towards wildlife conservation, the unit that I work for. So we're kind of like a nonprofit within state government, as weird as that is. So we don't get state tax dollars. We do get some federal funds for rare species, although we don't know if that's going to continue or not. But it's the bald eagle plate and then the monarch butterfly on Georgia aster. And I just think they look super cool. There's some older designs too that you can renew, like there's a hummingbird design. When it comes to tax time, you can donate part of your refund to the Give Wildlife a Chance tax checkoff, or even do a direct donation maybe on someone's behalf, either a memory or just as a gift. So these are all ways, in addition to what you do on your property, that you can help support wildlife, including owls. And then just stay curious. Obviously, you were curious enough to come here tonight. I greatly appreciate it. It's been fun sharing some things that I love about owls with you all, and hopefully inspiring you to attract them to your property too. But we do have a website, georgiawildlife.com. If you go there, you can sign up for an e-newsletter that goes out. It's just called Georgia Wild. And it goes out maybe once or twice a month, but it gives you an overview of what our non-game biologists are doing throughout the state. And so, from right whales to box turtles to hillbenders and everything in between, songbirds, owls. We are on all the social media platforms, although we don't use X or Twitter too much anymore. It's mostly Facebook and Georgia Wildlife. We do have a blog. And then I've got some videos and along with my coworkers on YouTube. That was primarily an effort during COVID because I couldn't do outreach. I'm the outreach coordinator. I couldn't do outreach. So switch gears, right? So I know you probably have other questions. Maybe some of it we'll answer now, but if not, if it comes to you at some random time, that's how my brain works. Feel free to reach out. I love being challenged. I have people send me strange sounds in the dark from their phone. What is this? I'm like, so even though I've been doing it 31 years, that's the cool part of it. You never know it all. Like you never graduate from wildlife school. There's always more to learn. It's never boring. If you are interested in a career in this outfit, you will never regret it. It's been so much fun. So do we have any other questions, Jen?
Yeah, Linda, first I want to say thank you so much for giving your time on a Thursday evening. It's not 9 to 5, and this work rarely is. I recognize that some people probably want to drop off because we've gone off over the time. And like Linda said, you are welcome to email her. She's so responsive, more responsive. I mean, you can never put her in the government employee category ever. She's
Please
so
don't.
your customer service is impeccable. And so
We're all pretty
we could
good.
all be a little more Linda, so thank you. But truthfully, I learned a lot tonight. I want to attract owls to the Milton parks. I find a lot of hawks, definitely a lot of red-tailed hawks, and I rarely see an owl in a park. And so this was really helpful for me. There's a couple more questions in here, and so if you want to stick on and hear these questions, and Linda's gracious enough to answer them, then what I've got for you, Linda, is what's the typical lifespan of a wild owl?
Okay, so it'll depend a little bit on the species. Obviously, they're not going to live as long as in captivity because there's just so many threats against them. But something like a screech owl, maybe like 3 to 5 years, but could be into the teens or even up to 20 years in captivity. And something like a barred owl in the wild, more like, I don't know, this is ballpark. Of course, it's going to depend on if they get smacked by a car or not. But I think the average age is about 8 years, whereas they can probably live into their mid 20s. And then I found a statistic online. I didn't fact check it, but it said that the oldest great horned owl on record was 50 years old. So that's crazy. But I mean, mostly, like if I were to just say in general, if they don't have anything traumatic happen to them, they'll live as long as your dog or cat, typically.
Yeah. I somebody mentioned Aware, and I want to give them a nod for sure because for DeKalb County and this part of Metro Atlanta, they're incredibly resourceful when it comes to supporting all types of wildlife. And
Absolutely.
our first Wildlife 101 was actually with the Georgia Wildlife Network, and
Mm.
they gave a presentation on what to do and how do you become a licensed rehabber, and also they need help with transportation. So I really appreciate you. I've called upon wildlife transporters and rehabbers in the area because I needed help with herons,
Mm.
and they are known to peck your eyeballs out. And so,
Wear like
yes,
suction goggles.
that's right.
Yep.
Um, Somebody said Pine Mountain in Cartersville. Any idea how many owls are in that area being displaced?
In Cartersville, I'm not really familiar with that, what's going on in that area.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it's hard to say. But I mean, any kind of rampant habitat loss is going to affect more than just the owls. It's if they can't find what they need to survive, then they're not going to.
right.
And it's unfortunate that that's going on. It seems like at record rates. So there again, do what you can on your property. I've got an acre and a third, and I have, with my box and other things that I mentioned you can do on your property, I've pretty much repopulated the neighborhood with barred owls and kept the rodent population down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
So
think
one
there's an
person can make a difference.
I think there's an interesting question here because we always have the crux when we're an animal lover of human intervention. And somebody said, any way to help owls when there's a large flock of crows chasing or harassing them?
Not really. I mean, that is one cool way to find owls if, or a bird of prey in general. If you hear all kind of ruckus from crows or blue jays, that's usually what it's about. But they're honestly so used to it. It's annoying, but it's not really hurting them. Even if they get pecked, it's just kind of like shoo fly, don't bother me, you know. And eventually they'll either fly away and lose track of the birds, or the birds will just give up. So um, yeah, I get it. I believe me, I get it. It's hard to sit back and watch something that you love so much have any kind of discomfort at all. But that is the norm for them, and they are used to it.
Right. Well, again, I thank you so much for your time. Thank you
Thank you.
to everybody on here for their time and
Mhm.
being curious and interested. And that's definitely a phrase that I like to use when I teach youth classes is all it takes is just being curious and
Mhm.
opening your eyes and finding something new that you've never learned about or thought about. And you're bound to learn a whole lot in your life doing it that way.
Mhm.
Wildlife careers, I love that you mentioned that, and I think we could probably do a little bit more of the career piece when we do these wildlife 101s.
Mhm.
Um, because a lot of the folks that come on here, it's kind of a 50-50 split of this is my hobby and interest, and this has become my career, and there is a
Mhm.
career in it, and there is a hobby, and it's really cool when your hobby becomes your career.
Absolutely. It's like they say, you never work a day in your life if you're doing something you love. And I'm definitely not thinking like, when's it time to go? Where's my page? I mean, not that those things aren't important, but
Yeah.
like even you mentioned, me working on weird hours, like this doesn't feel like work to me. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, thank you. So, folks, if you want to reach out to Linda and you have more questions about owls, I definitely go back and watch her presentation about frogs. Like I said, I've watched it 3 times and I still continue to learn. So, yes, thank you very much. And I think that's our time.
Thank everyone. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me part of your Wildlife 101 series, Jen.
Yeah, you got it. Anytime.